To stand for justice is to rise when the world bows, to speak when silence feels safer, to walk the path of truth even when it is lined with thorns. Justice is not just a word, it is a heartbeat that runs through the veins of every soul that refuses to be a spectator to wrongdoing. From the deserts of Karbala to the streets of today's world, justice has always demanded courage. Imam Hussain stood for justice not because he expected victory in numbers, but because he believed that silence in the face of oppression is a betrayal to faith and humanity. His stand was a light that pierced the darkness of tyranny. That light still guides the hearts of those who believe that truth must never bow to power. To stand for justice means to carry within yourself the courage to question what is wrong, even when everyone else accepts it as right. It is to see the suffering of others and refuse to look away. It means understanding that justice is not a grand gesture for the powerful. It starts with small acts of fairness in everyday life. When you refuse to cheat even when no one is watching, when you defend someone who is being treated unfairly, when you admit your mistakes instead of hiding behind excuses, you are standing for justice. Every such moment, though unseen by the world, is seen by God, and that silent integrity builds a strength that no force can destroy. Standing for justice is never easy. It means being misunderstood, criticized, or even hated. But as Imam Hussain showed, the cost of truth is heavy, and yet the reward is eternal. He faced a tyrant's army not because he hoped to win through strength, because he could not bear to see falsehood wear the crown of righteousness. His stand was not for himself. It was for every soul that would one day struggle between convenience and conscience. He taught that even if you stand alone, you are enough as long as you stand with truth. In daily life, justice begins at home, in how you treat your family, your friends, your colleagues. It's when you listen before judging, when you share instead of hoarding, when you speak kindly instead of cruelly. Justice is not limited to courts and laws. It is written in the way we live. When a teacher gives every student equal attention, that's justice. When a leader serves instead of commands, that's justice. When a person refuses to gossip or backbite, choosing peace over poison, that too is justice. Each act, no matter how small, becomes a building block for a fairer world. To stand for justice also means to fight the injustice within yourself, your pride, your anger, your selfish desires. The hardest battle is not against others, but against the part of you that wants to stay comfortable in silence. Justice is about disciplining your heart to love what is right, even when it hurts. It's about letting go of grudges and learning to forgive, not because others deserve it, but because you deserve peace. When you purify your heart, you purify your world. The beauty of standing for justice is that it inspires others. One honest voice can awaken hundreds of silent hearts. Just as the stand of Hussain rave awakened generations, your courage to do what's right can awaken someone near you, a friend, a child, a stranger, to do the same. The ripple of one brave act can travel farther than you ever imagined. You may never see the change you started, but the world will feel it. Justice is not just about changing systems, it's about changing souls. In a world full of noise, where lies are often celebrated and truth is buried under comfort, standing for justice is the purest form of rebellion. It's a declaration that your conscience is not for sale, your faith is not for compromise, and your humanity cannot be silenced. When you stand for justice, you join a timeless chain of souls, prophets, martyrs, believers who chose principle over pleasure and righteousness over recognition. Imam Hussain Ray did not stand because he thought he would win. He stood because he could not bow. That is the essence of justice, doing what is right, not because it guarantees success, but because it defines who you are. Even in his final moments, surrounded by loss and pain, he looked toward the heavens and said, "O Allah, accept this from me." That prayer was not of defeat, but of victory. The victory of moral strength over material might. So when life tests you, when lies seem louder than truth, remember Karbala. Remember that justice is not about outcomes, it is about effort. It is about keeping your soul clean when the world is covered in dust. Whether in your home, your work, or your society, be that one person who stands for what is fair, who speaks for those who cannot, who refuses to bend under pressure. Because the moment you do, you become a reflection of Hussein's brave courage, and his legacy of justice continues through you. Justice is not a dream, it is a choice. It is the quiet decision you make every day to live with honor. It is a flame that may flicker, never dies, so hold it high, even when the winds of falsehood blow strong. For when you stand for justice, you do not just change the world, you remind it of what it was always meant to be, a place where truth lives, where courage writes history in the ink of faith. Faith over fear is the heartbeat of every soul that chooses light in the darkest hour. It is the whisper that says, "I trust you, Allah, even when the world feels like it's falling apart." It is the courage to step forward when everything inside you tells you to turn back. Faith over fear is not the absence of pain. It is the strength to endure it with hope. It is the lesson Imam Hussain Ray taught in the burning sands of Karbala, where fear surrounded him like a storm, yet his heart remained calm as the sky. His eyes saw the swords, his ears heard the cries, but his soul heard only the voice of faith. He chose faith over fear, and that choice made him eternal. In life, fear visits everyone. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of loneliness, fear of what people will say. But faith is the voice that says, even if I lose everything, still have Allah. When you believe that fear loses its power. The world told Hussein's Ray that his journey was hopeless, that he was walking into death. But his faith told him that dying for truth is not death, it is the beginning of forever. That is the difference between faith and fear. Fear sees the fire, faith sees the light within the fire. In our daily lives, faith over fear means trusting God when life makes no sense. It means believing that every difficulty carries a hidden mercy, every delay hides a blessing, and every loss opens a new door. When you lose a job and still believe that Allah will provide, that's faith over fear. When you face sickness and still smile, trusting in His plan, that's faith over fear. When you forgive someone who hurt you because you believe Allah's reward is greater than revenge, that's faith over fear. Every time you choose peace over panic, you are walking the same path that led Hussain Ray through Karbala, the path of unshakable belief. Fear comes from focusing on what you can lose. Faith comes from trusting what you cannot see. The people of Hussain faced thirst, heat, death, yet they never complained. Their hearts were full of faith, their tongues full of remembrance. They had nothing left to lose but everything to gain. Their courage was not born from strength, but from surrenders. Surrender to the will of Allah. And that surrender is what makes faith powerful. It transforms pain into purpose, fear into fuel, and tears into testimony. We live in a world that constantly feeds our fears. Fear of being judged, fear of failing, fear of being left behind. But faith reminds us that everything written for you will find you, and everything not meant for you will pass by, no matter how tightly you hold on. Fear says, what if? Faith says, even if. Fear says, I can't. Faith says, Allah can. When you carry this belief, you walk with strength that no hardship can break. Faith over fear doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means believing that beyond every reality, there is a divine plan. Sometimes Allah removes what you want to give you what you need. Sometimes He closes doors not to punish you, but to protect you. When you trust this, you find peace even in pain. You stop asking, why me? And start saying, try me, O Allah, for I know you are with me. That is the heart of faith, a heart that beats stronger in the face of fear. Imam Hussain, a rave, knew that his path led to martyrdom, yet he walked it with serenity. His calmness in chaos was not because he was fearless, because his faith was greater than his fear. He believed that every drop of blood spilled for truth would water the garden of eternity. He believed that Allah's plan was perfect, even when the world looked cruel. And because of that faith, his story still inspires hearts more than 1,000 armies ever could. In our own struggles, faith over fear might mean speaking the truth, even when you might lose friends. It might mean starting a dream, even when failure seems certain. It might mean staying patient when your heart is breaking, because you believe that Allah heals hearts better than time ever could. Every time you take that step with trembling feet but a trusting heart, you become a reflection of Hussein's courage. You prove that faith is not something you say, it's something you live. Fear tells you to quit. Faith tells you to try one more time. Fear tells you to stay quiet. Faith tells you to speak up. Fear tells you that you're alone. Faith reminds you that Allah is nearer than your heartbeat. The world respects confidence, but heaven honors faith. When you face fear with belief, you turn every challenge into an act of worship. You begin to see that what scared you was never meant to break you. It was meant to bring you closer to the one who made you. So whenever fear whispers in your ear that you cannot go on, let faith roar louder that you were never walking alone. Remember Karbala. Remember the faces of those who smiled through pain because they saw beyond the moment. Remember that Hussein did not fight because he was certain of victory. He fought because he was certain of Allah. Let that certainty live in your heart. Faith over fear is not about being strong all the time. It's about trusting Allah even when you feel weak. It's about knowing that He sees your tears, hears your silence, and writes every breath into His mercy. So stand tall, even when you tremble. Smile, even when the world looks dark. Say, Alhamdulillah, even when it hurts. Every time you choose faith over fear, you write your own Karbala, a story of courage, belief, unshakable trust in the Lord who never abandons those who believe. When we talk about the stand for truth, we are not just remembering a moment in history. We are remembering a heartbeat that still lives inside every soul that refuses to bow to falsehood. Imam Hussain stood alone in the scorching sands of Karbala, surrounded by thousands, with no army, no power, no weapons, yet he stood taller than kings. His strength was not in numbers, but in his purpose. He refused to compromise, refused to surrender, and refused to sell his values for safety. This is what makes his stand eternal. The power of his truth was greater than the empire that opposed him. It is a message that still breathes in the life of every person who dares to live honestly, even when the world demands silence. In our daily lives, truth is often tested in smaller ways. We may not face a battlefield. We face choices every single day that define who we are. When a student refuses to cheat in an exam while everyone else does, that is a small Karbala. When a worker refuses to lie for profit, even if it costs his job, that is a stand for truth. When someone speaks up against injustice, even if their voice trembles, they are walking the path of Hussain away. The spirit of Karbala lives in those moments where doing what's right feels like standing alone, yet your heart whispers, I cannot bow before wrong. Truth is never easy. It demands courage when fear seems safer. It demands faith when results seem impossible. Look around in the world today. People often choose comfort over conscience. They hide behind lies to protect their image, their wealth, or their peace. But Imam Hussain showed us that peace built on lies is nothing but the silence of the soul. Real peace comes when your heart stands clean before your Creator, when you can say, I did not betray what I knew was right. His example reminds us that truth is not just spoken, it is lived, felt, and carried. If the cost is pain, when we live with truth, we may lose people, opportunities, or temporary happiness, but we gain something much greater, respect in the eyes of Allah and peace within ourselves. Truth makes your life heavy with meaning. Lies make it empty with regret. Think of the moments when you stood for something you believed in, even when no one supported you. Remember that silent strength. That was a glimpse of Karbala within you. Every honest decision is a drop of courage in the ocean of truth that Imam Hussain began. He could have saved his life by staying quiet. He could have chosen diplomacy, comfort, or compromise. But he knew that silence in the face of injustice is support for the oppressor. He did not raise his sword for power. He raised it for principle. He did not fight to win a war. He fought to awaken hearts. Awakening still continues. It tells us even if your truth costs you everything, it will give meaning to your life. It will echo beyond your time. In daily struggles, sometimes truth hurts. It can separate you from the people you love or place you in lonely situations. But loneliness with truth is better than companionship with lies. When you stand for honesty, you create a ripple that touches others. Maybe someone who is afraid to speak will find strength because you did. Your truth may not change the world in one day, but it can light a small corner of it. That light will join with others, and one day it will push back the darkness of corruption and deceit. That's how every revolution begins, with one honest soul who refuses to kneel. Imam Hussein's raised stand was not for a day, it was for all of time. It was a message that truth has no expiry. It does not fade when outnumbered. It grows stronger in silence, in pain, in sacrifice. It travels across generations and cultures, reminding us that integrity is eternal. Every act of honesty, every moment of moral courage is a flower growing from the soil of Karbala. When you choose truth in your home, in your workplace, in your relationships, you are keeping that soil alive. The world today is filled with false promises, corrupted hearts, and illusions of success. Yet, deep down, every human soul still craves one thing: truth. Because truth brings clarity, and clarity brings peace. Lies can decorate life for a while, but they can never give it meaning. The lesson of Karbala calls out, even when truth feels heavy, carry it, for it will carry you to light. Even when falsehood looks powerful, it will fall, because no throne built on deceit can stand forever. Hussain showed that one man with truth can defeat thousands with lies, not by the sword, but by the strength of his stand. So in your daily life, whenever you face a choice between what is easy and what is right, remember Karbala. Remember the thirsty child who smiled through pain. Remember the leader who stood firm while the world turned away. Remember the message that truth may bleed, but it never dies. Let that memory live in your voice, your work, your heart. Because every time you choose truth, you continue the legacy of Imam Hussain. You become a soldier, in the sire in the silent army of righteousness. Though your name may not be written in history, your honesty will be written in eternity. The spirit of sacrifice is the most beautiful and painful expression of love, faith, and purpose. In the land of Karbala, sacrifice was not measured by how much one lost, but by how purely one gave. Imam Hussain, as Raif, and his companions did not give their lives because they had no choice. They gave them because they believed that protecting truth was more important than protecting life. Their hearts were full of faith. Their souls were drenched in devotion. And their tears carried a message that the world can never forget. You sacrifice for what is right. Your loss becomes your legacy. Imagine the scorching desert of Karbala. No water for 3 days, children crying from thirst, and yet the tents of Hussein's Rai echoed not with fear, but with prayer. Every drop of sweat, every tear, every breath was an offering of faith. When Imam Hussain Rare saw his companions fall one by one, he did not see defeat. He saw the completion of purpose. When he held his infant son, Ali Asghar's Ra'eh, and lifted him toward the sky, he showed us that even the smallest sacrifice, when made for the sake of truth, becomes infinite in meaning. The blood that fell on the sand that day did not die. It bloomed into the eternal flower of courage and conviction. In our daily lives, the spirit of sacrifice is not always about giving life. It's about giving up something you love for something greater than yourself. When a parent sacrifices sleep and comfort to raise their children, that is a sacred act of devotion. When someone chooses honesty and loses profit, that is a sacrifice for integrity. When you forgive someone who hurt you, you sacrifice your ego to heal your soul. Every act of genuine sacrifice, big or small, connects you to the light of Karbala. It reminds you that love without sacrifice is hollow, and faith without endurance is incomplete. True sacrifice does not come from weakness. It comes from strength. It comes from knowing that material things fade, moral choices last forever. Imam Hussain Ray taught the world that real victory is not in surviving, but in surrendering everything for what is eternal. The power of sacrifice lies in giving without expecting anything in return. When you give from your heart, even your smallest deed becomes vast in the eyes of Allah. That is the secret that kept Hussain Aray and his companions smiling through pain. They were not losing their lives, they were offering them. Think of a candle that melts to give light. It disappears slowly. The glow it leaves brightens the world around it. That is what sacrifice does. It consumes you, but in doing so, it makes others see more clearly. The mother who works day and night for her children, the father who bears hardship to feed his family, the student who gives up comfort to gain knowledge, the believer who stands in prayer while others sleep, all are walking the path of sacrifice. They may not be in the deserts of Karbala, but their spirit is the same, to give selflessly for love, for duty, for faith. Sacrifice teaches us that life is not about taking, but about giving meaningfully. The more you give of yourself, your time, your kindness, your patience, the richer you become inside. The companions of Imam Hussain Ray gave everything, but they lost nothing that truly mattered. They earned honor that no empire could erase. The swords that struck them rusted in time, but their names still shine with light. Every act of goodness you do, every moment you endure pain with faith is a reflection of that same light. It means you believe that goodness is worth any cost. Our world today, we are told to hold on to wealth, to power, to comfort. But Karbala reminds us that letting go can be far more powerful. It reminds us that a heart willing to give is a heart closest to God. Sacrifice cleanses the soul. It breaks the chains of selfishness and pride. It teaches humility, the kind of humility that says, everything I have is from Allah, and if He asks me to give it back, I will. That surrender is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. Sometimes life asks for small sacrifices, your patience when you are angry, your honesty when lying seems easier, your kindness when people are cruel. These moments may not seem grand, but they build your resilience. They make you resilient, connect you to the unbroken chain of hearts that have chosen truth over comfort since the day of Karbala. The beauty of sacrifice is that it transforms pain into power. When you give up something for a noble cause, you discover that what you lost was never meant to stay, and what you gained was peace beyond measure. The tears of Karbala did not drown faith. They watered the seeds of inspiration for generations to come. Hussein and Ray showed that even in death, there is life, a life that continues through every believer who chooses principle over pleasure, righteousness over reward. So whenever life asks you to give up something precious, whether it is your comfort, your time, your pride, or your desire, remember the sands of Karbala. Remember those who smiled in hunger, who prayed in pain, and who gave without hesitation. Let that spirit breathe through you. Because when you sacrifice for what is right, you are never truly losing. You are joining a legacy of light that no darkness can ever extinguish. The victory of legacy is the victory that time cannot erase. It is the triumph that does not depend on crowns, swords, thrones. It lives in hearts, in memories, and in the unending echo of truth. The Battle of Karbala looked like defeat to the eyes of the world. The army of Yazid stood victorious. The tents of Imam Hussain were burned. The desert was filled with silence. But that silence carried something far greater than loss. It carried the sound of immortality. The enemies thought they had won, but they only destroyed their own names, while Hussein Ray became a symbol that could never die. His victory was not written on the battlefield. It was written on the soul of humanity. When a person stands for truth and sacrifices everything for it, they plant a seed that grows for generations. That is what Imam Hussain did. He did not fight for a moment's glory. He fought for a timeless message. His blood turned into ink for history, and his courage became a lesson for all who seek justice. Yazid's empire faded. His throne turned to dust, but the name of Hussein, a ray lives on every tongue from east to west, is the power of a legacy built on faith, not fear. A victory not of power, but a principle. In our lives, we all chase victory. Some seek it in wealth, some in fame, some in control. But true victory does not come from what you collect. It comes from what you create in others through your actions. When you leave behind kindness, honesty, and inspiration, you have won something far greater than worldly success. The legacy of Hussein, Ray, shows us that even if you fall for the right cause, you rise higher than those who stand on lies. His victory was not about surviving the day. It was about lighting a path that would never go dark. Every one of us has a choice to live for the moment or to live for meaning. Hussein chose meaning. He knew the world might see him as defeated, but Allah would raise his name forever. Today, centuries later, millions still weep for his pain, recite his story, and find strength in his stance. That is the mark of a true victory, when your life inspires others to become better, braver, and more faithful. You don't need to rule nations to have a legacy. You only need to live with integrity. Every act of goodness you do, every injustice you resist adds another page to your own Karbala, a page that eternity will read. Think of the people you admire most, those who have passed on but still move hearts. They are not remembered for how much they owned, for how deeply they cared, how bravely they stood, and how purely they lived. The world forgets power, but it never forgets purpose. Hussain proved that a single act of truth can outlive 1,000 empires. He showed that dying for faith is not the end, is the beginning of eternal life. His message continues to awaken generations because truth has no grave. It rises every time someone refuses to surrender to falsehood. In our daily lives, we can carry this spirit of legacy by how we treat others, how we respond to injustice, and how we handle our challenges. When a person chooses patience over anger, honesty over deceit, compassion over cruelty, they are building a legacy of goodness. It may seem small, but every small act of righteousness becomes a brick in the foundation of eternal victory. Just like Hussain, R.A., we may not see the fruit of our actions immediately, but time will reveal the strength of our faith. The world may forget what we said, but it will never forget how we made people feel. Legacy is not about being famous. It is about being faithful. It's about living in such a way that even after you are gone, your words, your character, your love continue to breathe in the lives you touched. Hussain, didn't seek to be remembered. He sought to be right. Because of that sincerity, Allah made him unforgettable. When your intentions are pure, your influence never ends. The light of your goodness will shine even when your name is no longer spoken. That is the unseen victory that Hussain achieved. Today's world, people run after temporary wins, promotions like money, applause, but these are victories that fade like shadows. True victory comes from standing firm when it matters most, from protecting truth even when it costs you comfort. If you lose a worldly battle but hold on to your faith, you have already won. Imam Hussain, reminds us that losing in the eyes of people can still mean winning in the eyes of Allah. His victory was not about defeating enemies. It was about defeating fear. When you live with truth, when you refuse to compromise your morals, you leave behind a light that others will follow. Your children, your friends, your community, they will remember your honesty, your kindness, your courage. That is how legacy works. It passes from heart to heart, generation to generation, until it becomes a movement. The stand of Hussain, became that movement, a movement of conscience, of justice, of divine purpose. So the next time you face hardship, remember Karbala. When life seems unfair, remember Hussain, R.A. His message whispers, if you walk with truth, even in loss, you are victorious. If you stand with justice, even in pain, you are immortal. The legacy of Karbala reminds us that real success is not about how long you live, but about how deeply your life touches others. Let your life be that message, one that tells the world that courage, faith, and sacrifice never die. Because just like Hussain, your light can outshine the darkness long after you are gone. Sacrifice for humanity, the eternal lesson of Karbala. The sands of Karbala were not just soaked in blood, sanctified by purpose, the purpose of standing for truth, justice, and humanity. Imam Hussain, did not rise for power, wealth, or worldly honor. He rose so that humanity would never forget the value of righteousness. His sacrifice was not for one nation, one tribe, or one generation. It was for every human heart that would ever face the choice between truth and comfort. Karbala reminds us that the battle between right and wrong never truly ends. It continues in every era, every society, and within every soul. Whenever we see oppression and remain silent, the message of Karbala echoes. Stand, even if you must stand alone. Imam Hussain, could have chosen peace by surrender to falsehood. but he chose sacrifice to protect truth. His stand was not a moment of despair. It was a declaration that justice is worth dying for. In that one act of courage, he taught all of humanity that integrity is greater than life itself. Today, Karbala lives in every heart that refuses to bow before injustice. It lives in the voice that speaks for the voiceless, in the hands that lift others from pain, in the souls that choose compassion over cruelty. Every time you forgive when it's hard, every time you stand for truth when it's unpopular, every time you help someone without seeking reward, you are carrying forward the light of Karbala. Imam Hussein's brave sacrifice was not a tragedy, it was a triumph of morality over might, love over hatred, faith over fear. He gave his life, but in return, he gave the world a lesson that time can never erase. Stand for righteousness even when the world stands against you. So remember, Karbala is not just history, it's a heartbeat. It calls to us every day to be honest when lies seem easy, to be kind when cruelty seems normal, to be brave when fear whispers, stay silent. Because the fight for righteousness never ends, and neither does the spirit of Karbala.